Thank you. I want to welcome the members and staff to the March DASNY board meeting. There's absolutely nothing to be seen out this window today. It's I don't know whether it's snowing or not. It's just, we're in a cloud. It wasn't snowing when I came in. Okay, well, so it probably isn't snowing, but we're completely socked in. I want to thank the legal staff and the support staff as well for making it possible for us to meet today in 3 locations. I know that John is in Buffalo. I know that Tracy, Sandra, and George Westervelt are in. Sandra is not there? No. Okay, sorry, I thought she would be there. So Tracy and George Westervelt are at Albany. And Beth. Beth, are you there? I can't see.
I am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And are there any special guests in Albany? Okay. And here in New York, we've got John Johnson, Roy Romsky, Merrill Snyder, and we've got Paul Ellis, and of course staff. With all of that said, let's get to the meeting. You've had a chance to review the minutes of the February 7 meeting. Are there any corrections or comments about those minutes? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve them? Thank you, Paul. Beryl, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Mr. Rumsky, the Finance Committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee met yesterday afternoon in New York City, also by video in Albany. We adopted the meeting minutes from the February meeting. We then advanced and discussed 3 resolutions: the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, Columbia University, and Interagency Council. On all of those, after some discussion, we unanimously agreed that we recommend those offerings at today's board meeting. We then discussed the TELP. Same result.
Would you mind
That concludes my report. Thank you very much. What's that?
The Finance Committee.
Speak up a bit.
Oh yes, we didn't. I'm sorry. Yes, we didn't make any changes to the charter, but we adopted it, the same charter as we had from last year, but we advanced and adopted the charter. Yes.
And we will speak up. Thank you for letting us know.
Thank you.
Are the mics placed appropriately? So it's up there. It's not what's on the table.
That's correct.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we're dealing
It's
with
not
those. No, it's
Gotta go up
towards
towards
the
the
top.
top.
I didn't know that.
Okay. I was talking down, but I should have been talking up.
Got it, right? Rule number 1.
This is not a group you talk down to. George, you've got a presentation, a DOB update. This might be the right time for us to hear that. And thank you very much for preparing it for us.
Sure. First of all, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. It's my pleasure to be with you all today. It's been a long time since I've sat here. As I was telling some of your staff, you get promoted and then they don't let me come anymore. Keep me in the office. It's nice to be here with you today. In the past, we've always tried to provide folks on the board with a kind of summary briefing on the executive budget. This year, unfortunately, we had to delay it due to the confluence of your schedule and our schedule relative to 30-day amendments, which were very important this year as a result of the well-known and discussed federal tax law changes. So how I think I want to approach this with you is kind of give you an overview of where we are right now in the current year, how that set us up going into the budget year from the spend side. Tell you a little bit about what the budget looks like on that spending side. Then I'll take you a little bit deeper into how tax reform played out and was responded to within the governor's budget. And then lastly, which is I think the focus for you folks on the board here, is how those tax law changes that we are proposing in the governor's budget have a commensurate and collateral impact on the PIT bond program. So with that, let me tell you that in the current year, which we refer to, people always get confused when we start throwing around FY numbers. I'll just say the current year as opposed to giving you the FYs because that makes it too confusing. As a result of tax reform, what we have seen is about an estimated $1.9 billion acceleration from next year's tax receipts to this year as folks tried to respond to federal tax law changes that were capping the deductions on state and local income taxes. Now, that's not a surplus for us this year because it results in a dollar for dollar reduction against next year. And so, you know, it's going to be carried forward and used to offset the loss of PIT receipts that we now expect in 19. Otherwise, the fiscal year 18 financial plan's in balance. The spending's estimated to be right now about $98.1 billion, which is an increase of 2% from fiscal year 17. I promise not to do that, but it's the prior fiscal year. So let me tell you, having looked at last year, what were we facing this year as budget makers for the ensuing fiscal year? The budget gap that we were looking at was about $4.4 billion. That sounds daunting. However, it's not, you know, on a contextual basis, it's certainly not the largest by any means that this governor has seen, and it's not the largest that this budget examiner has ever seen across my 30 years with state government. Base spending growth was estimated to be about $4.7 billion, which is 4.8%. We all recognize that we have a 2% global cap on spending, so that meant that we had to find $2.7 billion in reductions. Add on to those challenges the federal tax law changes that, you know, our fiscal planning and revenue folks estimate is going to add about $1.1 trillion to the federal deficit, and we're facing a commensurate fiscal risk, we think, in out years. So our response in 19 was to eliminate, obviously, that budget gap, and we did that by taking the $2.7 billion in spending reductions. There's about $7.7 billion in new resources that have been identified, and then there's $1 billion in revenue actions, which bring us back to that $4.4 billion gap and bring us back to level. This budget holds spending at 1.9%, so we're under the 2% cap by 1/10 of a point. Some of the highlights that I think would be of interest to the board on the spend side. Public school aid is $26.4 billion. That's an increase of about $750 million over the prior year. It's about a 3% increase. Remember that, you know, we're holding ourselves to a 2% cap overall, so we're providing more funding on a relative basis to schools than we are perhaps in other areas of our budget. On the Medicaid side, the budget recommends about $425 million in new health care capital. About 3/4 of that's going to be funded via bond funds, for about $300 million, and another 125 will be funded from monetary settlements. I'm not sure that you folks are particularly interested, other than those of you who ride the subways, but you know that, you know, part of the budget includes the subway action plan, of which the state, it's about a $800 million plan over 3 years. The state's committed to half of that. The city is supposed to match us. So in terms of the revenue actions that we're doing this year, I think there were perhaps 3 that are of interest for the board, and they're really the largest of that total sum I was discussing earlier, there's a $500 million assumption relative to the proceeds of health insurance conversions and related transactions relative to the not-for-profit health insurers, which will convert to corporations. There's a $140 million underwriting gains surcharge that's going to be levied on health insurers. And the other one, which I think has seen quite a bit of notoriety, or at least discussion in the press and the media, is we generate about $127 million from a 2 cents per milligram charge on opioids. So that's kind of the big picture actions. I discussed a little bit about the risks that we see. So to mitigate those risks within the budget, we're providing language within our appropriation bills that would allow for up to 3% reduction in local assistance disbursements if for some reason our tax receipts end up needing to be revised downward. School aid, Medicaid, public assistance, those sections of aid to locality spending are being held exempt from this provision. And in turning to the federal risk, we have state legislation that we had approved in the last budget and we're carrying forward into this budget that would set forth a process by which the budget director and the governor would be allowed to manage various spend outs if we see significant reductions in federal aid. So that's kind of the big picture on the spending revenue side. I think you're all very interested in how we responded to tax reform. And I think maybe what I want to do first here is kind of reiterate, while it's been, I think, well discussed and articulated, particularly by the governor, why we needed to do consider some state tax reform here. The first one is, I think, self-obvious, but I'll say it. The $10,000 SALT deduction limit has an outsized impact on New York State. And the state has constructed its code based on full deductibility of SALT, so which goes back over 100 years. I think that is the biggest and most important consideration. And then there are corollary issues, which is when you do this SALT limitation, because of the demographics of the state and the fact that we've got 10 million tax filers, you create winners and losers kind of arbitrarily here. So you look at the outsized impact, winners and losers just being created at the apparent whim of the federal government, and there are significant effects. There are also direct effects, and there are also some deferred effects that bear consideration, which is is the loss of deductibility obviously makes us less attractive to people prospectively when they're thinking about locating in New York State. So while that's not an immediate concern, it certainly is a prospective concern. And the cap on, and the second one I hope is, as a homeowner, is not true, but it perhaps is and is likely to be, which is to the extent that property tax, the deductibility of the property tax becomes limited, it's likely to impact property values. So those are some of the considerations that we've thought about. And lastly, there's a lot of discussion out in the media, the national media, some pundits, that, New York State SALT deductibility is basically subsidized by everyone else in the country, and that's not true, because New York State is really a donor state. We send far more money to Washington than we get back, and this would just exacerbate that if we didn't do anything. So, what were the responses? And the responses were being crafted, as we perhaps indicated to you at your last meeting, as you were convening, and we were, literally going to press with our 30-day amendments. I think there's a third aspect to what we're doing with tax reform, but it's more technical. It's called decoupling, which is really trying to make New York State income tax law consistent with federal law. That's something that happened, I can tell you, from my years of experience, way back in '86. We had to do something like that when we had the last big tax reform. But then the two instant actions that needed to occur, or that are in the 30 days, are the creation of what's called ESET, which is the payroll tax. ESET stands for Employer Compensation Expense Tax. And then we are creating two state-owned charitable gift trust funds to allow people to make charitable donations to health care and education in the state. Let me tell you a little bit about how those two things work and their relationship to our current personal income tax. First of all, on the ESET, that's at the option of employers. It would have a $40,000 per year salary threshold. The reason for that threshold is basically the impact of tax reform accelerates with higher incomes. And so, we feel, everybody up to $40,000, if you were in ESET, you would pay state personal income tax up to $40,000. Beyond that, we would allow the employer to withhold. And that withhold would grow over 3 years, starting at 1.5%, going up to 3% in year 2 and 5% in year 3. The reason for that phasing is to allow for salary growth on the part of employees. We see we estimate an overall 2 to 3% estimated increase in folks' wages year over year. And so by doing it this way, there would be a very limited and perhaps no impact on individuals' take-home pay. So what happens there is essentially a dollar for dollar reclassification of an individual's PIT liability now being paid by the employer. The proposal is designed to ensure that the state is no worse off in terms of its total collections or wage liability when you combine PIT and ECET. They should be in balance. So we're not expecting any material change in overall receipts from wages, regardless of whether folks use this employer-adapted ESET or everybody continues in PIT. The second aspect that is in the 30-day amendment is a charitable trust proposal. And what this will basically allow people to do will be to make a charitable donation, which is under the federal tax code deductible, in any given year to either the health charity or the education charity. And you would be able to obviously write that off your federal return for that year. In the ensuing year, in the year following that write-off, you would receive a credit again up to 85% of that donation against your state personal income tax. Again, we think that this is essentially neutral for the state. We don't see an issue. But when we look at all of this, we've made two, which are arguably significant changes to our PIT code. And since we use a bonding program that is based on personal income tax receipts, as we made these changes to the tax codes, or proposed these changes to the tax codes, we have to similarly look at what do we have to do to restructure the PIT bond program. And so what we're doing there, and let me just tell you that right now PIT revenues total approximately $50 billion, and the existing statute that we're operating under requires 25% of those receipts to flow through something we call the Revenue Bond Tax Fund, which provides for the debt service on PIT bonds. The proposals that we have here would change our current flow of RBTF revenues from the PIT revenue stream from 25 to 50% of net PIT receipts. And we would also add 50% of the ECET receipts. So those two streams would be combined, and we'd actually be increasing the percentage that we're dedicating to the RBTF. We believe this structure will increase the revenue flow through the PIT bonding program, and frankly, we think may result in a higher level of pledged revenues available to service the PIT bonds. The other step that we're taking is we're proposing to increase what we call the lockbox provision, which is incentive to appropriate and make PIT debt service payments on time, from the greater of 25% of PIT, or $6 billion, to 40% of PIT, or $12 billion. Now, the reason we went to 40 versus 50, because we have 50 on the RBTF side, is that we think that currently 25% of PIT was 6, and it's now going to be about 12. We're keeping the same 12 billion as the new minimum because that corresponds to 40% of the expected PIT and ECT tax base. The 50% RBTF flow through is higher, in relative terms is even higher, and builds in an additional margin. So we think that those changes improve, in fact, our overall coverage and provide for coverage and protection on our PIT bonds, which is very important, and at the same time allowed us to make these changes to the PIT code. So that's the extent of what I have for you. I hope that's useful and provides knowledge. What I can't give anyone, and my wife would vouch for this, is tax advice. That you're on your own.
May I ask a question? Is there a relationship between the charitable deductions that you mentioned in health and education and the 529 proposal?
I'm sorry, would you repeat the question, please?
Okay.
I don't know. The 529 is the higher ed.
They asked to repeat the question.
Oh, so I was just asking if there was a relationship between the charitable donations to health and education and the 529.
I mean, my understanding of the charitable on higher ed, or excuse me, on ed, is it's focused on public school.
Yes, the 529. Yes. But I think what we had heard in education is that there's something in New York State tax law that actually wouldn't allow it to go to certain schools. So we were interested. So when you were talking about this, I was just curious about the relationship. The charitable donation for the health and education, where is that? What is that found? We don't always read tax code in the education department, so I'd be curious to look into this one.
Where is it found?
Yeah, in the 30-day amendment.
Yeah, it's in the 30-day amendment. I don't know the exact provision. It's going to be in the revenue bill.
Okay, thank you. Great.
Okay.
John, please.
On the two charitable trusts, what happens if one is oversubscribed or undersubscribed? There are more charitable contributions for
Can you
education.
speak up,
let's
Mr.
say.
Johnson?
Let's just say that there are more charitable contributions to the education side to the trust than the budget calls for. What happens to the extra money?
I think, okay, and I'm not the revenue guy here. I'm your infrastructure guy. But I think is my understanding on this, and I'll go back and ask folks and we'll get you a full answer. But I think that the potential and possibility of that is practically limited by virtue of the structure of the combination of allowing for the charitable contributions and giving folks, it's a combination of three things. The $10,000 limit on deductibility, the 85% credit, and I think income limitations here. I think folks have looked at that and they don't see that as a practical event occurring. But I'll find out more for you.
Thank you.
Are there other questions here
You guys are busy this year.
in Albany? John Gardner in Buffalo?
That was excellent. That's the clearest presentation of this subject that I've seen or heard.
Oh my
John,
goodness.
thank you.
Don't
And
tell
George-
anybody that outside this room.
George, thank you very much for
Oh, you're welcome.
for being with us today.
We're happy to do it. As I said, we're sorry for the confluence last month, but we were just not in a position at that point to talk about it because we were still, going to press.
We understand, George, and it's good to have you here with us today. Thank you very much for that.
Oh, you're welcome, Jim.
The next item on the agenda, resolutions to proceed with new financings. Mr. President.
Thank you. Good morning. Behind tab 3 is the American Academy of Dramatic Arts transaction. Stephen Kozer will present the credit summary and staff report.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve.
The board is being asked to adopt a resolution to proceed for fixed and/or variable rate, tax-exempt and/or taxable bonds with a not-to-exceed amount of $34 million to be sold through a private placement on behalf of the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. This will be the Academy's first DASNY bond issuance, and it is DASNY eligible as a degree-granting higher education institution chartered by the Board of Regents of the University of the State of New York. The Academy was established in 1884 and has been at its current location on Madison Avenue in New York City since 1963. The Academy also established a presence in California in 1974. The Academy offers associate degrees at each campus, and many of its graduates have gone on to distinguished careers in the entertainment industry. The proposed bond issue will be used to finance the acquisition of an approximately 33,000 square foot building at 118 Madison Avenue in New York, which is directly next to its educational facility. The Academy has been leasing the residential facility it is purchasing since 2012 and will continue to use it as a residential facility. The The Academy has a contract to purchase the facility for $39 million. The seller has agreed to finance $2 million of the purchase price through an unsecured interest-free loan with a lump sum payment due in 10 years. The Academy will also contribute approximately $3.5 million, leaving approximately $34 million to be financed through the proposed bond issue. The bonds are expected to be privately placed to TD Bank and Citizens Bank, each a qualified institutional buyer. Each of the purchasers will purchase up to $17 million of the bonds, with each bank having a 50% share of the anticipated $34 million bond issuance. The bonds are expected to have a 10-year term, with principal amortizing over 30 years. It's expected that the bonds will be variable rate with a swap, resulting in an indicative fixed rate of approximately 3.74%. The Academy will engage in an independent swap advisor. The purchasers are expected to take mortgages on various properties of the Academy and require financial covenants. With projected escalations on the existing lease, the annual debt service of the proposed bonds will be less expensive than the lease payments otherwise would be, beginning in fiscal year 2020. Therefore, the proposed debt service will not negatively impact the Academy's bottom line. While the Academy is smaller than other DASNY higher education institutions, both in the number of students that attend and in the fiscal size of its operations, it has reported operating margins ranging from 11.6% to 16.6% over the past 5 years. The Academy is entirely dependent on student-related charges, as tuition and fees and auxiliaries accounted for 98% of total revenues in 2016. The Academy is challenged by thin liquidity ratios, which fall below the DASNY medians. Therefore, it is important for the Academy to continue to maintain enrollment and pricing at levels that will continue to cover its expenses. Regarding enrollment, applications doubled over the past 5 years, and the acceptance ratio decreased from 27% to 16%. The matriculation ratio has been relatively steady, around 40%. First-year enrollment has increased from 294 students in 2012 to 372 students in 2016. The Academy reported an operating profit of over $2 million in 2016. So in summary, the Academy is purchasing a residential building, which it is currently leasing. The debt service payments will essentially be replacing what it currently pays in lease payments. The purchasers have done their diligence and have agreed to terms with the Academy to purchase the bonds through a private placement. Staff is therefore requesting the board to adopt a resolution to proceed for a bond issue amount not to exceed $34 million, which will enable the purchase to be completed. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Just as a reminder, the Finance Committee has recommended the board to proceed this resolution. Are there questions? Questions in Albany? In Buffalo?
No.
Then may I have a motion, please, to approve the transaction? Thank you, John Johnson. Thank you, Jerry, for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
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 As there are none opposed, the motion passes unanimously. Mr. President.
Thank you. Behind tab
Mr.
4.
President, can I just ask a question? Did we approve the minutes of the last meeting?
We did.
We did.
Yes, sir, we did.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay.
Behind tab 4 is the Columbia University transaction. David Ostrander will present the credit summary and staff report.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The board is being asked to adopt a resolution to proceed with one or more series of tax-exempt and/or taxable fixed and/or variable rate bonds with terms not to exceed 35 years and an amount not to exceed $350 million on behalf of Columbia University. Bond proceeds will be used both for new money and refunding purposes. As far as the new money portion, proceeds will be used to finance numerous projects located throughout the Columbia University system. This is expected to include various construction and renovation projects related to the university's expansion into the Manhattanville campus, as well as renovation projects of the Morningside and Medical Center campuses. Those projects are detailed in Attachment 1, many of which were also financed with proceeds from the 2016 and 2017 Columbia bond issues. A major portion of the projects include costs associated with the construction of Columbia's new business school, which is to be located on the Manhattanville campus, and that facility is expected to be completed in 2021. As far as the refunding portion, this will be a current refunding of DASNY's 2008 bonds. Assuming current market conditions, a total net present value savings in the range of $34.6 million, or 17.2% of refunded bonds, is expected from the proposed refunding. As far as security, the university is currently rated AAA by both Moody's and S&P, with both rating agencies assigning a stable outlook to the university, and accordingly, Columbia qualifies for an unsecured borrowing under DASNY's financing guidelines. I think the members are pretty familiar with the credit highlights of Columbia, so I'll just point out a few of the recent trends. The university continues to experience positive demand and enrollment and remains among the most selective universities in the country. Of the 37,389 applicants for fall of 2017, just 6.1% were accepted. And headcount enrollment grew to 32,429 for fall of 2017, which is a 5-year college. Operating margins have averaged over $338 million annually, which equates to a 7.8% operating margin over 5 years. And lastly, Columbia continues to report significant net assets, which exceeded $14.7 billion as of fiscal year in 2017. Mr. Chairman.
David, thank you very much. As a reminder, the Finance Committee has recommended the approval of this resolution. Are there questions?
I just want to point out that my husband does consulting work for Columbia.
Thank you very much. Don't think that will affect your vote at all.
Neither do I.
You're fine. Thank you. Are there questions in Albany or in Buffalo?
None.
Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the transaction? Gerard Bromsky, thank you. John Gardner, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
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 Is there none opposed, the motion carries unanimously. David, thank you.
Thank you.
Behind tab 5 is the Interagency Council of Developmental Disabilities Agencies, Inc. transaction. Gerard Clauser will present the credit summary and staff report.
Good morning.
Good morning, Gerard.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. The staff report provided the members is seeking authorization for a resolution to proceed for the Interagency Council of Developmental Disabilities. This is a pooled financing for 12 members of the Interagency Council of Developmental Disabilities Agency. The proposed bond issue will be for a term not to exceed 26 years and will be in an amount not to exceed $55 million. Tax exempt and taxable and or taxable, fixed and or variable rate bonds in one or more series at one or more times through a negotiated and or private placement. Bond proceeds will be used to refinance existing bank loans and reimburse certain institutions for their cash expenditures. These refinancings and cash expenditures were used to renovate or acquire certain properties that are used to provide services for the developmentally disabled. The security features will include a pledge of all OPWDD and DOH Medicaid revenues attributable to each financed project, a standby intercept of these OPWDD and DOH Medicaid revenues attributable to each financed project, a debt service reserve fund of 6 months, mortgages on real property acceptable to DASNY where available. Prior property approvals have been received for 14 of the 50 projects. Prior to initiating the development of a project to serve individuals with developmental disabilities, a not-for-profit provider is required by regulation to complete a Certificate of Need or CON. The CON is reviewed by OPWDD for compliance and need. Ultimately, these projects are supported through contract and reimbursement arrangements with OPWDD. The state commits to support the development and operation of the project if it is completed in conformance with the PPA, subject to annual appropriation of sufficient monies by the state legislature. Currently, there are 35 projects with PPAs that are pending approval. These 35 projects are for the UCP New York City ADAPT, the replacement operator for certain FEGS properties. The POS will not be released until PPA and non-PPA funding is clear. The HASC Diagnostic and Treatment Center project is a non-PPA funded and a PPA is not expected. The HASC Diagnostic and Treatment Center project has a DOH approved CON. The funding of debt service for this non-PPA project is under review, and the intercept mechanics is what I'm specifically referring to there. This project is not expected to have a replacement operator component. This will be the 12th financing. It will be like the prior IAC transactions, with each borrower having their own individual loan obligation. We recently learned that Hask Center, Inc., a PPA-funded project in the amount of $20 million, will not be able to meet the current financing schedule. We have included all participants in this request for approval and will likely bifurcate the transaction when coming back to the board for the adoption of documents. It appears that the Hask Center, Inc. project may be ready in the fall. Anticipated ratings are AA2, and one additional note to the board. The board may have noticed that the DASNY finance fee provided in the supporting sources and uses is larger than usual. The fee included has been calculated using the new fee structure, which is approved in March of 2017. Mr. Chairman.
Gerard, thank you. Again, the Finance Committee has recommended the approval of this resolution. Are there questions for Gerard? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the transaction? Thank you, John Gardner. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there none opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Gerard, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Okay. Behind tab 6 is the United Health Services Hospital, Inc. TELP transaction with Portia Lee presented.
Behind tab 6 is the TELP financing for United Health Services Hospitals in the amount of $10.065 million. As you know, it's a policy of Public Authorities Control Board that transactions which exceed $10 million in a 12-month period be presented to both DASNY Board and ACB for approval. There's an attached equipment list which sets forth the various types of cardiology, radiology, clinic, hospital-wide, and other equipment. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Portia. Are there questions, Portia? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the TELP financing? Hello? Johnson, thank you very much.
Raised her hand.
Darrell, thank you very much for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. As there are none opposed, the motion carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is the report of the Corporate Governance Committee. Chairman Johnson.
The Corporate Governance Committee met yesterday afternoon, and here in New York, and with one member in Albany. And we, after adopting the minutes from the July 19th meeting, we proceeded to review proposed changes and for endorsements of our many policies, and I'm going to ask Mike Cusack to take us through those. Mike?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As a result of yesterday's review, that the Governance Committee did complete a review of 3 governance items and 4 operational policies, 3 of which are before the board this morning, for a resolution. The 3 governance items reviewed would be the Corporate Governance Committee Charter and Governance Principles, number 1, the mission statement and performance measures, including the metrics to quantify performance goals and measurements, and number 3, the DASNY bylaws. On the operational policy side, the Governance Committee had a chance to consider the Code of Ethical Conduct for board members, the Whistleblower Protection Policy and Procedure, the Time and Attendance Policy, as well as the guidelines pertaining to the disposition of real property. So as a result of that review, there are 3 items to talk about this morning. The first is the board's annual approval of the mission statement and performance measures and revised metrics. Staff had recommended on the metrics only under Goal 1 2 typographical corrections that are highlighted in the in the red line draft in your book to insert the word "the" before the date the contractor is obligated, and to take out the word "we" and replace that with DASNY to indicate the organization formally. And then under Goal 3, a clarifying amendment was made to move the footnote at the double asterisk currently appearing at the bottom of the page up under the discussion of meet or exceed MWBE utilization goals, so that the footnote is grouped together with the portion of Goal 3 that it relates. So with that being said, there are very minor clarifications recommended by staff, and that does require a resolution of the board, so we complete our annual review at both governance and board level.
Mr. Johnson, thank you very much. Mike, thank you. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go.
All right, are you going to call for the motion?
Not now.
All right. Subject to any other questions, do I hear a motion to adopt as the governance committee recommended? So, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Next.
The second item before the board this morning are the bylaws for DASNY. And after we had a discussion yesterday in the committee on a first draft of a proposed amendment to section 3.7 to deal with adverse weather conditions, as well as a discussion on 3.8 to add the secretary to the presiding officer provision. Based upon that discussion, staff was directed to go back and further confer and research and consider various points and make a subsequent proposal for potential amendments to both of those sections at a future governance committee meeting. So for purposes of the annual review that the board of directors must complete of the bylaws, the resolution that's before you today is to adopt or re-adopt the bylaws in their current form with no changes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Any questions?
None here.
All right. Then, do I hear a motion to adopt, continue the bylaws as we know?
Paul. Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
All right, next.
Last item before the board is the annual review of guidelines pertaining to the disposition of real property. After review by staff and the governance committee, no changes are recommended to this policy, and this does require a board resolution, after which we'll attend to the necessary filings. Thank you.
Is there a motion? Thank you. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Carried.
I believe that completes what we did. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next agenda item is management reports. Mr. President.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Good morning. We have a number of very exciting items, including updates on some of the One DASNY initiatives that we have executed on. And again, just as a reminder, the thrust and the focus of everything that we have been addressing, identifying, and executing on has been around a three-legged stool. And that three-legged stool consists of making sure that with our mission, we are focused on top-line revenue growth. Number one, greater efficiencies. That's second. And then number three, stronger risk management. Very strong risk management. And so I highlight that because over the next 2 months, we will be coming to the board with some very concrete additional changes that we have put in place. And it will be 2 months to the day that I will be here 3 years. And so I'd like to just very briefly highlight a number of things that we have done, which represents a continuation of the work that we are doing. Overhauling DASNY's financing guidelines, introducing hybrid financing for our clients, bringing together our procurement and OPG into resource acquisition, expanding our toolbox of construction delivery methods by including a CM build, deploy, design, build at SUNY Brockport, implementing interactive dashboards across DASNY. We modernized our electronic tools from Office 365, Wi-Fi, introduced e-payables to pay our vendors electronically. We've revamped our annual reports and procurement report. And then with respect to responsiveness to our clients and needs, we sped clients to the market at the end of 2017. We continue to support our partners and peers with respect to Moynihan Station and the Javits Center expansion project, and deliver resiliency and recovery projects for GOSER. I would also add, we have a very aggressive succession and talent management plan that we put in place almost 2.5 years ago. We continue to execute on that. It's a very important initiative as we think about preserving our intellectual capital, and in addition, thinking about the growth of the organization and the efficiencies that we could begin to tackle in terms of how we think about our human capital. And then finally, we continue to be leaders and push the envelope in MWBE participation with utilization goals in public finance, construction, professional service. So again, we focus on integration. We're doing a lot of cross-training. We have integrated project teams, and then integration of our client management approach, which I'll go through in a lot more depth later on. We also recognize we need greater flexibility, so we are reevaluating our procedures and processes, and in particular, the staff has done an incredible job of looking at how we eliminate duplication and excess processes. In other words, the belts and the suspenders that have been present. We are focused on efficiency and better risk management, and most importantly, improving how we deliver to our clients. What does that look like? We have, over the last 3 weeks, put in place a key account management initiative. We are defining DASNY as a long-term strategic partner that offers a range of value-added capabilities to our clients. To that end, in February, we launched the Key Account Management Initiative. In 2 workshops facilitated by EY, more than 30 leaders from across DASNY established the Client Account Management Operating Framework. Client account management will expand on our strong working relationships with both our public and private clients. It will allow us to further deepen these relationships and increase the role we play in helping our clients achieve their goals and objectives. Board members, Mr. Chair, our focus with respect to client account management is institutionalizing our relationships across all of DASNY, as opposed to being idiosyncratic and having a strong relationship at one point, but recognizing that our coverage model has to reflect our ability to work at every level of a peer group institution. I'd like to also highlight, again, we talk about increasing top-line revenue growth. How does DASNY become even more competitive? How does DASNY think through being the value-added partner above and beyond our competition, local development corporations? One of the areas that we are aggressively working on, and Paul Koopman is leading this, and this is expanding DASNY's energy performance contracting program, reducing energy usage and increasing operational efficiencies. We are developing expanding energy performance contracting offerings for private institutions. DASNY is working on a new energy services procurement that will offer turnkey project services to both public and private clients through a combination of our tax-exempt leasing program in our procurement and construction services. Using these energy performance contracts, clients will have the opportunity to pay for today's facility upgrades with tomorrow's energy savings without tapping into existing capital budgets. A central component of the One DASNY initiative is to bring together DASNY's financing and construction programs. This is the prototype of that collaboration. The other aspect that we are working on, we did a financing for TIL. We have a very aggressive reintroduction and remarketing of our TIL process that is in place. That is, again, a collaborative process with our marketing team as well as our public finance practice. So we're very excited by these initiatives. We will be coming to the board next month. We would ask that you set aside a little more time, approximately 45 minutes, to have an introduction on the changes that we are advancing in our construction business, specifically as it relates to our small projects team. As we have highlighted to each of you, over the last few years, the capital cycle has changed dramatically for us, moving from large-scale projects to smaller-scale projects. We have to innovate, we have to be flexible, we have to integrate, and we have done so, and this is from the bottom up. And so we will talk to you about our work authorization process, our job contracts, as well as how we are positioned to service our clients in particular. So the one client that we are initially focused on with respect to small projects, who came to us recognizing that we have gone through this change management initiative, is CUNY. And so they have indicated to us that they wanted us to introduce this in their program. So we're very excited. And a lot of that is happening. So that's what we're going to introduce to you next month. The following month, we will talk to you about the processes that we are putting in place with respect to efficiency and risk management in our public finance/finance business, as well as talk about board roles, responsibilities. We will have Squire working with us. They're working extensively with us. We'll have a pre-brief before that meeting, but I wanted to give you a window into the next 2 months.
Terrific.
Okay?
Thank you very much for that, George. We'll look forward to both presentations. For this second one, let the folk at Squire know that I suspect we're going to have a lot of questions.
We anticipate that.
All right.
We anticipate. We hope you have a lot of questions for next month.
Okay.
As well,
All right.
because one of the things that we are continuing to highlight to the board as well as ourselves, our construction delivery capability drives 90% of what we do here. And so it's very important in terms of the changes that we are making to make ourselves much more efficient and look at our risk management processes so that we can better partner with our peers across the state and leverage our relationships through our public finance business with our, private issuers. So what we don't expect to build for them, but what we highlight to each of them is they're at a net disadvantage if they're not talking to DASNY, because DASNY's construction model in business is working for a broad array of clients across the state. Of course. So that's very important, and we want to make sure that we at least leverage that and give you our best insights on that.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
We're also very excited for a new initiative. I'm pleased to introduce our new Public Finance Diversity Fellowship for graduating college students. We have presented to you the DASNY Public Finance Diversity Fellowship package. It's in your package. We continue and have made the business case for diversity, which is a core element of the work we do at DASNY. And this fellowship is a very important step in supporting that initiative. We have spent the last year working and collaborating with our fellow underwriters, and we came up with this complement of a capability. The fellowship is a full-year position beginning July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2019. It will consist of 2 6-month terms. Now, you have to be a graduating senior to participate in this program. The first term will be spent in DASNY's Albany office serving as an analyst in the Public Finance Division. The second 6 months will be spent alongside with one of DASNY's investment bank partners, either in Albany or New York City, depending on the selected investment bank. Our investment banking partners, two of 13 firms, okay, will be selected in a lottery. We will identify two. We've had tremendous buy-in from our underwriters, who we have been talking to about the challenges of diversity in financial services. And we see this as an incredible opportunity to add and promote the opportunity for these institutions to look at non-traditional students coming from different backgrounds. So this is a very important initiative on our part. This has been collective. Portia, Nicholas Olette, Mike, Lorna, Jeff, Mike, we've all worked collaboratively, very deep. We've had outside counsel. That's the risk management issue. Okay. Outside counsel working with us to ensure that we have covered all parameters and have this program on solid ground. And I got to tell you, the responses from the schools are favorable, the responses from the students are favorable, and the responses from our underwriters are favorable. They want, everybody is saying, pick me. And we say, we can't. We've got a lottery, folks, okay? We've got a lottery. It's arm's distance. It's going to be a very transparent, highly structured procurement process in order to put your hand in and pull out two cards. All right? So we are working on that. So
well,
just
let me say that, as you know, I learned of the program on Monday. And so for the avoidance of any doubt at all, I think that it is inspired. Anyone who understands the financial services industries understands that diversity in that industry, those industries, can be difficult to achieve. This program is a terrific step in the right direction, preparing young, diverse candidates for entry into the financial service industries. And that we're doing this, I think that we've thought of this, that we have pushed this through, that staff has worked on this. I think it's just it's a wonderful tribute to DASNY and a wonderful tribute to DASNY's commitment to diversity in financial services. And I want to thank you all very much for what you've done.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Yes, we're very excited, and really the commitment that we're making is huge, but it's a modest financial commitment, quite candidly. It will cost us anywhere from $23,000 or $25,000 per individual for the 6-month period. So we're talking no more than $50,000, probably $50,000+ because we'll pay benefits. We think that this is an incredible win-win opportunity, but more importantly, it highlights a lot of what the governor has been talking about with respect to MWBE participation, and what we talk about, which is we demand efficiency, we're also pushing for equity and inclusion. These are not mutually exclusive issues. And so I tell people all the time, we don't check boxes, we want to innovate, we want to keep pushing. This is an incredible opportunity. Thank you. With that, I will turn things over to Portia, who will give us a market update.
Thank you, Gerard. Behind tab 11 are the standard public finance reports. New issue supply is currently about $40 billion year to date, which is down about 36% from supply levels last year. We're expecting to see in the market this year a calendar of about $7.5 billion, which is up from what we've seen in recent weeks. The main themes in the market last week were the economy, and there has been some announcement regarding steel and aluminum tariffs. Municipal bond funds reported outflows last week after inflows previously. Despite the recent outflows, the bond funds have netted approximately $3.2 billion in inflows to the market year to date. 1, 10, and 30-year MMD rates have increased since the last board meeting 6, 10, and 13 basis points respectively. There's included in the package of reports the annual credit enhancement report for not-for-profit portfolio. The results are really pretty much in keeping with what you've seen over the last few years. Overall, probably the one takeaway here is that the percentage of unenhanced bonds and unenhanced private placement bonds continues to grow. Again, not really a surprise given the fact that in our earlier years there was such significant use of bond insurance, and that obviously has not been the case since the financial crisis. There's also included in the reports, bond sales summary reports, which include performance metrics, and that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Are there questions for Portia? Questions at Albany or Buffalo?
No.
Okay, hearing none, I think it'd be appropriate at this point to go into an executive session. May I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss the financial and credit history of particular corporations and proposed pending or current litigation? Errol, thank you. Is there a second? John
Second.
Gardner, thank you. Thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we are in executive session. Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. On Saturday, February the 24th, I was honored to be recognized by the Urban Male Leadership Program at Lehman College. The program focused on the retention, academic success, and graduation of African American and Latino male students. In accepting the award, I relayed how New York State is leading the nation in supporting diversity and launching key programs to build a robust and inclusive economy. On Thursday, March 1st, I participated in a panel discussion for Ernst & Young on efficiency, talent management, and succession planning. Great turnout.
Where was that?
Ernst & Young,
No, I know.
42nd.
Oh, the main headquarters.
Yeah, main headquarters, yeah. You weren't invited? Did you get?
Missed that one.
You missed that one, okay. You have received the updated budget documents, which include the proposed DASNY operating budget for fiscal year 2018-19, a financial plan, and a resolution adopting the proposed operating budget. Kim Nadell will now provide you more details about the proposed budget, which then will be put to a vote. Kim?
Thank you, Gerard. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. The package that you received reflects our operating expenditures for the proposed budget of approximately $115 million. That is a 1.99% increase over our projected 2017-18 fiscal year results. The proposed budget is essentially the same as the version that we discussed in January. It has increased slightly as we have updated our payroll assumptions, in particular related to implementation of collective bargaining agreements that were approved with over the last several months. Before asking you to approve the proposed budget, I'll go back to our discussion in January, review some of the key assumptions. As you can see on the presentation, page 3, the primary drivers of the increase are related to salaries and benefits. Our salaries are proposed to increase by approximately $1.8 million. That increase reflects contractual obligations for cost of living and step and longevity increases, as well as 12 new FTEs, which is partially offset by funding from the evolutionary and healthcare transformation reserves. Those will facilitate knowledge transfer with retiring employees. Benefits will increase approximately $1 million. This increase reflects approximately a 6% increase in health insurance premiums. Those are due to higher rates as well as participation. and higher contributions for retirements that are based on the estimate received from the employee retirement system. That's increased to reflect the additional FTEs that I just mentioned. The increase in FTEs results in a proposed budget level of 529 FTEs. This reflects the 13 new positions that we added to the grants administration group during the current fiscal year that were not in the current fiscal year budget. When you take all of these assumptions into account, you can see on pages 4 and 5 of the presentation that the 2018 to 19 operating results are expected to show a small surplus, and that's an improvement from the slight projected budget in the 17-18 fiscal year. Are there any questions on the budget?
Questions for Kim on the budget as presented? All right, Kim, is that the, does that conclude your presentation on the budget?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
We've been given the budget proposal for the 2018-2019 year. There being no further questions on that budget, may I have a motion, please, to approve? Carol, thank you very much. Is there a second? I'm sorry, who's there? Somebody did that. George, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? The motion carries unanimously and the budget is approved.
Just have one more
Yes, sir.
thing. Construction.
We have fee structure.
Oh,
There is a resolution, where is it?
It's in the president's report, right behind the budget resolution.
Thank you. It is the fourth or fifth page in the president's report, immediately behind the budget resolution. We must take action on the resolution of the Dormitory Authority of State of New York adopting a fee structure for the authority, and that fee structure comprises 4 or 5 pages immediately following the budget resolution. Have members had a chance to take a look at this? Everybody comfortable with it? Then may I have a motion to approve? Carol, thank you. Is there a second? John Johnson, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Resolution approved. And thank you very much, Mike, because I would have missed that. Now, sorry, Mr. President.
last thing. In our construction division, we want to highlight several completed projects since the start of 2018. $12 million in energy performance upgrades at Baruch College, including the replacement of the cooling towers for the Information Technology Building and the Newman Vertical Campus. $13 million in energy performance upgrades at Hunter College. $11.6 million in interior renovations for Sophie Davis Medical School at City College of New York to create instructional office and specialized training spaces, and $15.5 million in first floor renovations, Allied Health Building at New York City College of Technology. I'll hand this off to Steve Burrow.
Thank you. Steve?
Yep, thank you. Everybody hear me okay?
Nice pool, Steve, by the way. Nice pool, Steve.
Nice pool, yep.
It is a nice pool.
It doesn't leak, which is a good thing.
One next.
All right, so on the cover of the construction projects report are photographs from the Bronx Community College campus pool rehab project in the alumni gym building. The budget for the project was $4.8 million. H2M were the architects, designers. Design started in January of 2012. It completed in August of 2014. Our general contractor was Philip Ross Industries. Construction started in September of 2015 and completed in February of 2018. So this was an existing concrete-based 60-year-old pool structure that presented a number of challenges as many unforeseen conditions became apparent during the construction phase, leading to additional scope and time extension of the demolition phase. The project also fell under the Department of Health regulations, with DOH final inspection required in addition to the typical New York City filing and inspection requirements. And the pool's new mechanical and electrical systems were far more complex than the existing systems, leading to an extended training period for the facility staff as well as turnover period. So I've been down there a couple of times. It was a challenging project. Like I said, there were a lot of existing conditions we didn't know about. And all in all, though, we battled through it, and the pool is now open for public use. We have 4 new projects listed in the construction projects report on page 3. The first is the New York State Veterans Home, St. Albans, where we're doing an HVAC upgrade. The location is in Jamaica, Queens. $6.9 million. HTF, Brooklyn, Staten Island projects. There's 5 of them. They're mostly installation of emergency generators. In total, $7.2 million. At Buff State, we have the Tower 2 renovation about to get underway. This is the 3rd of 4 tower gut rehabs that we're doing for them. That project cost is $14.5 million. And lastly, another HTF project up here in Waterford, New York. New construction of a firehouse at $5.9 million. So in total, about $35 million in new projects highlighted this month. As far as expenditures go, January 2017 year to date, last year we were at $583 million. January 2018, this year we're at $738 million. The delta is about $155 million year over year. And just a couple of projects to highlight this month. Always talking about the Court Officers Training Academy, seeking the TCO now in May. We're going down tomorrow for another project status meeting with the general contractor. Finished work continues, as does system startup and site work. Project is moving along. At LaGuardia Community College, our stop work order was lifted and facade work is restarting. The delay due to the stop work order is being analyzed at this time with regard to the project schedule and the impact. I was out at South Beach Psych Center last Thursday. Building package 5 is moving along, including MEP rough-in, slab-on-grade placement, spray-on fireproofing installation, exterior light-gauge metal framing installation, additional site work with regard to piles being driven for site retaining wall, and a remedy to the existing utilities entering the building. The removal of soil and the replacement with styrofoam is underway as well. On the SUNY front, we're getting close to the start of the summer 2018 project season. Today underway, there's 4 capital projects that are due to complete in the fall. They are at Brockport, our design-build 250-bed residence hall, Bishop Hall at Buffalo State, up at SUNY Canton we have a project, and at SUNY Plattsburgh as well. And in total, those 4 projects, their construction value is $60 million. We have 29 summer projects with a value of $32 million at various campuses across the state. And in addition, in May, there'll be 5 new capital projects starting at Albany, Alfred, Buffalo State, Oneonta, and Plattsburgh that total $90 million. So overall, we either have $180 million in construction today, or they will be in construction in May, with completion dates of either the fall of 2018 or the fall of 2019. Lastly, on the NYCHA side, we're up to 40 projects substantially complete in the security area, the CCTV area. We have 17 lighting projects that are underway. 1 is substantially complete. 5 have been approved for construction, 4 are at 100% design, and 3 are nearing 100% design. 27 developments are complete with the appliance installation. And under the quality of life heading, we have 58 projects now in the design phase and 2 in the construction phase. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Steve. Are there questions for Steve? Hearing none, the last agenda item for this meeting is the General Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One update with a scheduling note. I'd like to report that last night the governance committees of both DASNY subsidiaries also met to consider the mission statement and performance measurements and metrics, as well as the bylaws for each subsidiary. In each case, the recommendation was made to proceed with readopting both documents with no changes, and we will schedule the regular notice and schedule the regular subsidiary board meetings for the April meeting to finish part 2 of that annual review. It will be at our April meeting, May meeting, worst case. Thank you very much. That concludes my report. Thank you.
And unless there's further business to come before this board, I want to thank the members and staff for several very robust discussions today. I look forward to the meeting in April. It is on the 11th of April, and it is in Albany. That said, may I have a motion, please, to adjourn? George, thank you. Is there a second? Carol, thank you very much. All in favor? Aye. Aye. The motion carries, and we are adjourned.